Oh my God, what is happening to me?
The sound of his slap echoed through the village like thunder before rain. Adeyemi's hand was still raised, his fingers trembling with rage, while his wife Folake crumpled to the dusty ground like a broken calabash. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, mixing with tears that had long stopped meaning anything. The marketplace had gone silent. Women clutched their wrappers. Men looked away. Children peeked from behind their mothers' legs, their eyes wide with the kind of fear that plants seeds in the soul. "You burnt my food." Adeyemi's voice was a roar that shook the morning air. "Useless woman, my mother warned me about you." Folake didn't speak. She had learned long ago that words were kindling to his fire. She simply gathered herself from the ground, her wrapper torn, her dignity scattered like grains of rice in the sand. She could feel their eyes, the pitying glances, the whispered prayers, the silent judgment that always landed on her shoulders, never his. "Why does she stay?" someone muttered. "What did she do to anger him so?" another voice wondered. Adeyemi grabbed the clay pot of water she'd been carrying and smashed it against the ground. Water spread across the earth like spilled tears, soaking into the soil that had witnessed this scene too many times before. He stood over her, his chest heaving, his eyes wild with a cruelty that had become his second skin. "Get up and go to the river, fetch more water, and this time don't take all day gossiping with those useless women." Folake's body ached, not just from today's beating, but from yesterday's and the day before, and all the days that blurred together into one long nightmare. Her ribs remembered his kicks, her arms remembered his grip, her spirit remembered when she used to laugh. She pulled herself up, dust clinging to her torn wrapper, and began the long walk to the sacred river. Behind her, she heard Adeyemi's laughter as he joked with the other men, the violence already forgotten by him forever carved into her. The sun was merciless overhead, but Folake welcomed its burn. At least the sun's pain was honest. At least the sun touched everyone the same. When she reached the riverbank, she collapsed onto her knees and let the sobs come, deep, wrenching sounds that seemed to rise from the very bottom of her belly. The river whispered its ancient song, and for a moment, Folake wished she could simply walk into its depths and let the water carry her away to wherever rivers go. "Please," she whispered to no one and everyone, "please, let this end." The river's surface shimmered, and somewhere in its depths, something listened. What happens next will change everything. If you want to see justice served in ways you've never imagined, subscribe now, because this story is about to take a turn that will shake you to your core. Adeyemi stumbled home that evening, his belly full of palm wine and his head swimming with the praise of other men who feared him. Power, he had learned, was the only language worth speaking. His father had taught him that a man who couldn't control his household was no man at all. He found his compound quiet. Too quiet. Folake should have been cooking, should have been moving around preparing his evening meal. Instead, she sat by the cooking fire, staring into the flames with eyes that looked like empty wells. "Where is my food?" he demanded. "It's ready," she said softly, pointing to the covered pot. He grunted and sat down, watching her serve him with shaking hands. Good. She should shake. She should fear. That's how a wife learns respect. He ate in silence, and when he finished, he didn't thank her. Thanks were for equals, and she was not his equal. That night, he fell onto his mat and sleep claimed him quickly, the deep, careless sleep of a man who has never questioned his own actions. The palm wine made his dreams thick and strange. He dreamed of water, of rivers that spoke with women's voices, of hands reaching up from depths he couldn't measure. When Adeyemi opened his eyes the next morning, the world had shifted. No, he had shifted. The first thing he noticed was the weight on his chest. He looked down and screamed, a high, unfamiliar sound that came from a throat that wasn't his. Breasts. He had breasts. His hands flew to his face, feeling soft cheeks, full lips, the delicate bone structure he had struck so many times. No. He scrambled to his feet and his wrapper, Folake's wrapper, fell to his ankles. The body was hers. Every curve, every scar he had given her, every mark of his violence now carved into his own flesh. He could feel the ache in the ribs he'd broken 3 moons ago, the throb in the arm he'd twisted last week, the constant dull pain that was Folake's daily companion. Across the room, someone stirred. Adeyemi watched in horror as his own body sat up, stretched and smiled. But the smile was wrong. It was gentle. It was Folake's smile wearing his face. What is this? What have you done? he stammered in Folake's voice. The person in his body stood and walked to the water pot, moving with a feminine grace that looked bizarre in his muscular frame. When she spoke, it was with his deep voice, but the words were all Folake. "The river goddess heard my prayer," she said simply. "She has given us both a gift." "A gift? Change us back right now!" Folake, in his body, turned to face him, and for the first time in their marriage, she looked at him without fear. It was the most terrifying thing Adeyemi had ever seen. "Oh, my husband," Folake said, and her smile in his face was sharp as a knife. "Forgiveness must be earned, and you, my husband, you have much to learn." She moved toward the door, carrying herself with the swagger he used to wear. "Now get up, the water pots won't fetch themselves, and Adeyemi," she used his name like a weapon, "don't burn my breakfast." The door closed behind her, and Adeyemi stood in the empty room, trapped in the body he had brutalized, facing a day he could never have imagined. The clay pot was heavier than Adeyemi remembered, or perhaps Folake's arms were weaker than his had been, weak from malnutrition, from exhaustion, from carrying burdens both visible and invisible. He hoisted the pot onto his head, feeling his neck strain under the weight, and began the walk to the river. Every step was agony. The wrapper kept slipping. Her breasts ached from having no proper support. The morning sun beat down on skin that felt thinner, more vulnerable somehow. And the eyes, God, the eyes that followed him were different now. "Hey, Folake," one of the village men called out, laughing. "Why are you walking like a confused goat this morning?" Another man grabbed his arm as he passed. "Come here, let me talk to you." Adeyemi yanked away, his heart racing. "Don't touch me." Since when do you talk back?" The man's face darkened. "Is it because your husband is not here? Should I teach you manners?" Fear flooded through Adeyemi's body. Folake's fear. The fear he had planted and watered for years. He mumbled an apology and hurried away, feeling the man's laughter chase him down the path. His hands were shaking. His breath came too fast. Is this what she felt every day? At the river, the women clustered together, washing clothes and filling pots. When they saw him, their chatter died down to whispers. "See how she carries herself today, like she doesn't know what shame is. I heard Adeyemi beat her in the market yesterday. What did she do this time?" Adeyemi wanted to scream at them. "I did nothing. It was never about what she did. It was about what I am." But the words stuck in his throat because he had always known that he was the monster in this story. He bent to fill the pot, and his back screamed in protest. How many times had Folake made this journey? Twice a day? 3 times? How many miles had these feet walked while his feet rested? How many pounds had these arms carried while his arms swung free? The water sloshed as he lifted the pot. Too full. He'd filled it too full. Water spilled down his wrapper, cold and shocking. He tried to adjust it, but his arms buckled. The pot crashed to the ground, shattering into pieces. Silence fell over the river. "Folake broke her pot," someone said, and the words carried the weight of judgment. Broken pots meant wasted clay, wasted water, wasted time. It meant punishment. Adeyemi's stomach dropped. Punishment. He knew what that meant. He had been the one who... "Adeyemi will be angry," a woman said, her voice mixing pity with satisfaction. Very, very angry. He gathered the broken pieces with trembling hands, cutting his finger on a sharp edge. Blood welled up, and he watched it drip, remembering all the times he'd seen Folake's blood and felt nothing. The walk home was a funeral march. Each step brought him closer to the rage he knew so well, except now he would be on the receiving end. When he entered the compound, Folake was sitting under the mango tree, sharpening a machete. She looked up at him with his own eyes, saw the broken pot pieces, and her face, his face, went dark. "You broke the pot. It was an accident. Accident?" Folake's laugh was bitter. "Do you think I care about accidents? Do you think excuses fill water pots?" She moved toward him, and Adeyemi backed away, his heart hammering. Please, Folake, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." "Sorry?" Folake's laugh was bitter. "How many times did I say sorry to you? How many times did I beg?" She raised her hand, his hand, and Adeyemi flinched, his arms coming up to protect his face in a gesture he'd seen 1,000 times but never understood. He waited for the blow. It didn't come. Instead, Folake lowered her hand slowly. Go inside, she said quietly. Cook the afternoon meal. And Adeyemi, don't burn it. Adeyemi stumbled into the house, his whole body shaking. Behind him, he heard Folake sit back down, the sound of the machete against stone resuming its rhythmic scrape. The lesson has only just begun. 3 weeks passed like 3 lifetimes. Adeyemi learnt the geography of pain, the way his lower back screamed after hours bent over the grinding stone, the blisters that bloomed on his palms from pounding yam, the burns from cooking fires that seemed to reach for him with hungry fingers. He learned that Folake's body was a map of exhaustion, with no country called rest. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the rest. Folake, why is this soup watery? Folake asked one evening, her voice, his voice, cold as river stones. I used the ingredients we had, there wasn't much. Excuses, pour the soup onto the ground, cook it again. Adeyemi watched his evening's work soak into the earth and felt something break inside his chest. This was what he had done, this exact thing. He had poured out her effort, her care, her hours of work because he could. Because power without mercy is just cruelty wearing a crown. He cooked the soup again, his hands shaking with hunger and exhaustion. When he finally ate, it was the leftovers from Folake's plate. Cold, meager, the scraps he used to leave her. The village whispered. They always whispered. Folake looks sick these days. She's getting thinner. Did you see the way Adeyemi treats her now? Even worse than before. But no one intervened. No one ever intervened. Women were property that could be damaged, and as long as the damage wasn't too visible, the world turned its face away. One night, as Adeyemi lay on his mat, the thin, uncomfortable mat, while Folake slept on the good one, he heard himself crying. Soft, silent tears that he'd never allowed himself before, because men don't cry. But this body knew how to cry. This body had been crying for years. Folake, he whispered into the darkness, please, I understand now. I understand everything. Please forgive me. From across the room came her voice, quiet and thoughtful. Do you? Do you really understand? Or do you just want the pain to stop? Both, he admitted, because lies felt impossible now. Both. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry for what you did, or sorry you got caught in the consequences? Adeyemi thought about this, really thought about it. In his old body, in his old life, he would have said whatever words would get him what he wanted. But here, trapped in the evidence of his own cruelty, the truth felt like the only thing he had left. I'm sorry for what I became, he said finally. I'm sorry I thought strength meant violence. I'm sorry I mistook fear for respect. I'm sorry I never saw you as human, as fully human as myself. I'm sorry I took a woman who loved me and turned her into a thing that flinched. Silence stretched between them like the river. I can't give you back those years, Adeyemi continued, his voice breaking. I can't unfeel the fear I put in your bones. I can't unknow what I taught our neighbors about how a man treats his wife. But if you give me back my body, I swear on every ancestor and every god, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your forgiveness. More silence. Then, quietly. And if I choose not to forgive you? The question hung in the air like smoke. Adeyemi felt something shift inside him, a strange acceptance, bitter as unripe fruit, but honest. Then, he said, I will live in this body, and I will learn to live with what I deserve. Morning came grey and heavy with rain. Folake sat up and looked at him for a long time. Adeyemi could see thoughts moving behind his own eyes, see how weighing scales he couldn't measure. The goddess said, I must forgive you to break the spell, but she never said when. Adeyemi's heart sank. What are you saying? I'm saying that forgiveness is not a door that opens just because someone knocks. It's a seed that grows only in soil that's ready. She stood and walked to the doorway, looking out at the rain. You hurt me for years, Adeyemi, years, and now you've suffered for weeks and think that's balance? 6 months had passed since the morning Adeyemi woke up in his wife's body. 6 months of water carrying, of cooking, of bowing, of swallowing words, of feeling small, of understanding what it meant to live as prey in a world full of predators. The rainy season had come and gone. So had the harvest. Adeyemi's hands, Folake's hands, had planted and reaped, had woven and cleaned, had worked until they bled, and then worked some more. His spirit, once so proud and loud, had been ground down like grain on a stone until only the essential remained. Folake, in his body, had been teaching the village in her own way. She greeted everyone with respect. She helped the elderly carry their loads. She spoke kindly to children. Slowly, the men began to whisper, Adeyemi has changed. He doesn't beat his wife anymore. See how gentle he's become? That's a real man. The irony was sharp enough to draw blood, but Folake just smiled. One evening, she came home and found Adeyemi collapsed by the fire, too exhausted to move. The meal was cooked, but he hadn't served it. He simply had nothing left. She looked at him, and for the first time in months, something softened in her expression. Get up, she said gently. Let's go to the river. Adeyemi followed her through the darkness, his legs trembling with fatigue. The sacred river glowed under the moonlight, its surface smooth as silk. They stood on the bank where Folake had prayed all those months ago. I've been thinking, Folake said quietly, about forgiveness. Adeyemi's heart began to race. For months I watched you suffer. I watched you learn what I learned, feel what I felt. And do you know what I discovered? She turned to face him. Revenge is sweet at first. It tastes like justice, but after a while, it just tastes like ash. Adeyemi, let me finish. Her voice was firm but not unkind. I wanted you to hurt like you hurt me. I wanted you to know in your bones what you had done. And now you do. You know. I can see it in your eyes. Those eyes you used to blacken with your fists. Tears streamed down Adeyemi's face. I'm sorry. I will be sorry until the day I die. I know you are. I can see that too. Folake looked up at the stars, then back at him. But here's what I've learned. Forgiveness isn't about whether you deserve it. It's about whether I deserve to be free of the anger that's been eating me alive. She knelt by the river's edge and placed her hand, his hand, in the water. I've been carrying your cruelty like stones in my pockets, letting it weigh me down even after the goddess gave me power. And I realize now that's just another way of letting you win. The river began to shimmer, that same otherworldly glow from months before. So here's my decision, Folake said, steady. I forgive you, not because you've earned it through suffering, but because I choose to put down the burden. I forgive you so that I can be free. She paused, and her next words came out sharp and clear. But forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Forgiveness is not the same as trust, and forgiveness is definitely not the same as going back to how things were. I don't want things to go back. I never want to be that man again, Adeyemi said. Then prove it. Not to me. To yourself, to the village, to every woman who flinches when her husband raises his voice. Prove that a man can change. Prove that strength without compassion is just weakness wearing a mask. The river goddess rose from the water then, magnificent and terrible, her eyes ancient as stone. The wife has spoken forgiveness, the goddess said, her voice like rushing water. The spell will break. But hear me, Adeyemi, I will be watching. If you raise your hand in violence again, if you let cruelty back into your heart, you will not wake up in her body next time. You will wake up in the river, and the river does not forgive twice. I understand, Adeyemi whispered. The goddess smiled, terrible and beautiful. We shall see. The world spun, light and darkness twisted together like wrestling snakes. When Adeyemi opened his eyes, he was looking up at the stars from his own face, feeling his own broad chest rise and fall, his own strong arms trembling with something that wasn't weakness. Folake stood a few feet away, back in her own body, her wrapper wrapped properly, her head held high. They looked at each other across the space between them, a space that felt like an ocean, like a bridge, like a question waiting for an answer. What happens now? Adeyemi asked. Folake considered this. Now you go home and think about the man you want to be, and I go home and think about the woman I've always been but forgot how to see. Will you please let me try to be better, to be worthy? That's not my job anymore, Folake said, and there was power in her voice that hadn't been there before, or perhaps it had always been there, just beaten into silence. My job is to build a life where I'm safe, where I'm respected, where I'm seen. What you do with your second chance is between you and the goddess. She turned and walked away from the river, her steps sure and steady. Adeyemi watched her go, this woman he had broken and who had somehow found a way to remake herself from the shards. 2 years later, the village still tells the story of Adeyemi's transformation. Some say the river goddess cursed him, some say she blessed him, some say Folake has magic in her that bent a cruel man into something better.
Folake lives in her own compound, her own space, her own life. She weaves cloth that people come from 3 villages over to buy. She teaches young girls that their worth is not measured in a man's approval. She laughs freely, and when she walks, she doesn't look over her shoulder. Adeyemi lives quietly, humbly. He works his farm and helps his neighbors. When he sees a man raise his voice to his wife, he speaks up, gently but firmly. Brother, there's another way. Some men listen, some don't, but he keeps speaking because silence is complicity, and he's been complicit long enough. Do they ever speak? Sometimes, brief exchanges in the market, polite greetings at festivals. There's no romance, no reconciliation, no tidy ending wrapped in forgiveness's pretty paper. And that's the thing about justice, real justice, not the kind from fairy tales. Sometimes the person who was hurt gets to walk away. Sometimes the person who caused harm has to live with the gap they created, the bridge they burned, the love they murdered with their own hands. Folake chose freedom over forgiveness's false promise of restoration. She chose herself, and in choosing herself, she became the hero of her own story. Was she right? Was she wrong? Should she have given him another chance after he learned his lesson? Should forgiveness come with reconciliation, or can it stand alone, complete in itself? The river knows the answer, but the river keeps its secrets. And perhaps that's how it should be, because some questions aren't meant to have easy answers. Some stories aren't meant to end with everyone happy. Some justice is served cold, and some wounds, even when healed, leave scars that teach us who we want to be. So what do you think? Did Folake do the right thing? Should she have taken him back after he changed? Or is some damage too deep to repair? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story made you feel something, hit that subscribe button. Share this tale with someone who needs to hear it.